Well, good morning, everyone. So nice to see you. You all look like you've more or less survived the holidays so far. What I think we'll do, um, since we're all sort of finding each other across the links after a lot of meditation this morning, is I'm going to give us some bells and we're going to do a little more while everyone's coming on. We sit, I'm going to read you a little something that's been on my mind. It's a very old poem that we treat as a sutra by a guy named Shitou Xiquan. He's one of the great founding teachers. It's called Taking Part in the Gathering. Same thing, you can just let it wash over you. Don't worry about understanding. The mind of the great Indian immortal. It's Bodhidharma, that's also you. The mind of the great Indian immortal moves seamlessly between east and west. It's human nature to be quick or slow, but in the way there are no northern or southern ancestors. The mysterious source of the bright is clear and unstained. Branches of light stream from that dark. Trying to control things is only delusion. But hanging on to the absolute isn't enlightenment either. We and everything we perceive are interwoven and not interwoven. And this interweaving continues on and on, while each thing stands in its own place. In the world of form, we differentiate substances and images. In the world of sound, we distinguish music from noise. In the embrace of the dark, good words and bad words are the same. But in the bright, we divide clear speech from confusion. The four elements return to their natures like a child to the mother. Fire is hot, the winds blow, water is wet, the earth solid. The eye sees form, the ear hears voices, the nose smells fragrance, the tongue tastes salt and sour. Everything, depending on its root, spreads out its leaves. Both roots and branches must return to their origin, and so do respectful and insulting words. The darkness is inside the bright, but don't look only with the eyes of the dark. The brightness is inside the dark, but don't look only through the eyes of the bright. Bright and dark are a pair, like front foot and back foot walking. Each thing by nature has worth, but we notice it is shaped by its circumstances. Things fit together like boxes and lids, while the absolute is like arrows meeting in midair. When you let these words in, you encounter the ancestors. Don't limit yourself to your own small story. If you don't see the way with your own eyes, you won't know the road even as you're walking on it. Walking the way, we're never near or far from it. Deluded or cut off from it by mountains and rivers. You who seek the mystery in the daylight or in the shadows of night, don't throw away your time. Yes, so hi everyone. First, this morning we had a series of open temple leaders guide, I don't know, 7 hours of sitting? Something like this. And I noticed I kind of dipped in and out of it, but what a gift it was to have that space open and tended. And the first period that I signed into, noticed tears started to come into my eyes and just a feeling of happiness to be with everyone, but also immense gratitude to the Open Temple leaders, not just for today, but all year, who get up incredibly early and find poems and ring the bell and bring themselves in such a wholehearted way to each other and to the space. And I don't know, I don't myself have an extended family much. And I think there was a feeling of, oh, this is part of what family is. This kind of attention and consistency and care. So thanks, Jan Brogan and Marion for wrangling everyone too. And I was noticing how, we were sitting with the solitary brightness without fixed shape or form. It knows how to listen to the teachings. It knows how to understand the teachings. It knows how to teach. That solitary brightness is you. And remember someone once saying to me, I was with you until that last line. I don't think I can quite get myself there, which clearly was the gate, her in particular. But I was noticing so much, I think, because each person was passing the baton this morning, and how it's one thing that we're in, and everyone's temple, and it spreads out as far as you can possibly imagine what we're in. And yet each person brings their own ring, their own voice, their own prajna in understanding the koan. And I've been thinking a lot about the taking part in the gathering sutra, and that one thing, and yet the original name of that sutra is the agreement between unity and differentiation. You think, well, that's not quite as sexy, is it? It's fine, but that it somehow accounts, or it's very interested in the mystery and the magic that is, we're all one thing, manifestations of the same mystery. And yet there's an eachness that we come to know and discover. And it's not really knowing as in knowing facts about yourself or getting your story straight in any way about who you are, but that is the ideas and constraints and effort and all the things that obscure who we are fall off. It just becomes apparent. And there's a beauty and an aliveness to that. And part of what becomes clear in that too is, what's our role in a community? I think it's amazing how many people being part of a community come to me and say, I'm not really a community person, or it's very difficult for me to be in community. And I say, oh, you're in the right place. A lot of people who sit here feel that way, Don't worry, it's not a problem. But so much of how this is such a family thing, I suppose, and it comes up in spades around the holidays, but so much of being in a community is recognizing all the tangles that you come into with other people, which really are your own mind, right? But they take the form of these monsters and angels that are other people. And some friends I was with a week or so ago were telling me this game that they play. They can play it any time, but they really play it around the holidays. And it's a version of bingo. And how it works is that you write, I'm sure you can play, you could probably play right now. You take your family or, whoever, and you write down the annoying thing that they do or say, each person. You make a bingo chart. And as the day or the evening goes on and they say or do that thing, then you check it off. And as soon as you get bingo, then you call your sibling. In this case, the siblings call each other and they just say bingo and they hang up. and, and the best, and see, you're laughing. You can see how it works. Can see. And I was sitting with my partner and, as I said, I don't have a lot of extended family. So there are other ways I could play this game, I'm sure. But we, within about 2 minutes, could do her entire family. Oh yeah, your mother would say the thing about how, your nephew's girlfriend is very nice, but not very attractive. And your brother-in-law would do the thing where he picks a really abstract moral argument for the sake of discussion, which is really like a pointed jab at someone else, and then says, what, I'm just interested in it. And so you just go and you see, oh yeah, that's, we could do this anytime, but in a way, accepting and contending with all the annoying and predictable things that we all do is part of taking part in the gathering. And you think that you have trouble with what everybody else does, but often what's the most difficult is letting people see what's annoying and difficult about this person, right? And trying to somehow include that and somehow bear not being perfect or not being predictable or being so predictable that it's boring or. But all that is what starts to get free. And where I was, John mentioned I was in Africa about a week ago for about a week, and I want to talk about it just a little bit because as a place, I think there are as a place in my life, and it's just a strange place I have a karmic connection to for reasons that remain inexplicable to me. But we all have places that hold some window to the eternal for us. Might be the mountains, it might be a particular city, it might be your garden, it might be a retreat center, and they're places that somehow teach us, like a retreat, that window is actually open all the time, but we're not usually paying attention. Somehow, with certain places, we think, oh, yeah, everything's connected. Funny, I've heard that before. And this particular place, it's in Sabi Sands in South Africa and pretty close to the Kruger National Park. And the family who shepherds this land, the great-great-grandfather originally won it in a tennis match in the early 1900s. And when he was, I don't know, a very young man and thought, well, I don't know what to do with it. But and back then they were using it, usually those kinds of lands, they were using for grazing or for lion hunting. And by the time it reached the father who now is still shepherding it, they found themselves without a father at 15 and 17. And the family was saying, you need to sell this. It's impractical. And they said, well, we think we'll make it pay. But we don't want to do lion hunting. We think we're going to try to have people come visit it instead. And they said, well, how are you going to do that? I said, we don't know, but we're going to figure it out. And so, as their story goes, they had a one Land Rover, and it would only turn left. But they started in the safari business at 15 and 17 in these little huts out on the land. And they somehow decided that they were going to restore it instead of take from it. And they've pretty much dedicated their lives to doing that. And it's a pretty magical place. It's a place where Nelson Mandela first went when he got out of prison. That was his way of beginning to restore something in himself. And one of the things that is remarkable to me about it is very much like Sesshin. You spend many, 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 many hours a day in silence, and you spend many, many, many hours a day just observing the nature of mind. And there's yours, which tends to get more quiet as things happen because there's not much happening that is feeding your sense of self. You're just riding around or sitting quietly watching things. And beginning at about 4 a.m. every day, it is just a cacophony of sounds. All sorts of birds, all sorts of shrieks and grunts and moans and growls, and you're just it was one of my favorite things I came across this time, which I had not heard about before, is something called a monotonous lark. And you think, well, that's not very fair. That's not very nice. But it sings the same little song over and over and over and over again, but it has friends. And so what usually happens is they surround you, and almost like they sing in rounds. And so you just have this cascade of monotonous larkiness going around you. And pretty quickly, with all this happening, it gets very hard to hold on to your sense of being separate. And I remember the first couple of times I went, that was really hard, and I had to start finding problems so that I could somehow hang on to my sense of separateness. Like that I wasn't doing enough for the world, or that, I don't know, I wasn't, you name a problem, I could find it. And I realized after a while, oh, this is a refusal to letting things to letting the openness that's trying to happen. And it's very, one of the things you also realize is that the nature of everything is very similar to your own nature. Sometimes I play this game with friends. You go to a bar, it becomes you look across and see who else is at the bar, and you see what kind of animal they are. And they're a zebra, or they're a giraffe, or they're clearly a rodent, or they are whatever they are. But watching these animals, and you really just drive out and see what finds you that day. We came into a buffalo herd, about 500 buffalo all around us. And buffalo always look a lot like they're judging you. If you don't believe me, look them up. Like they clearly are judging you. And clearly are they have this horn and these, big helmet piece that they use to smash into things. And they're not very happy that you're looking at them usually. And this group of young male buffalo were exactly the same as any group of young male anything. They were smashing into each other, and they actually had gored each other. Like they were just playing, but they had huge gashes in their sides. And you could tell they thought this was terribly funny, because then they would dive their heads down into the dirt and they'd bring them up and they'd have like flower crowns on of um, green and dirt and all sorts of things. And then they would find bushes of any size and shape to kind of scratch themselves on. And so they're going around and you just see, oh, they're boys. That's part of what they're being, is they're just boys. Or you have was a young male leopard we kept finding. And he's at a point where he's separating from his mother. And so she'll help him catch a kill. And then he'll lay his body on it so that she can't have it and hiss at her. And you can tell, like, he's being a teenager. That's part of what he's doing. It's his job. And she's incredibly patient with him. But he's thinking he's tough and he's got it until clearly he doesn't. And we saw him trying to get himself down out of a tree. You think of leopards as graceful people in trees, and they are, but you realize, oh, they're teenagers. And he stepped and he stepped, and then he just fell blindly out of the rest of the tree. And he was a little embarrassed, but he pretended not to be. So you can just tell whatever is happening. The mountains, the rivers, and the great earth are none other than your own heart mind. And this is not just true in the bush. This is true in New York City. It's true in Camden. It's true in Oxford. It's true. The difference, a couple differences. One is pace, which helps. The other is just there's absolutely no other agenda other than observing. You're just offering your attention, and pretty soon you're swallowed up in whatever is going on. And one of the very interesting things I was noticing this time is there is this backdrop of the eternal in the place, meaning that there's this endless dance that's happening of all the ingredients there. The mud makes the elephants cool, and the elephants makes the grass transform, and the dung beetles roll things so that they transform the next level, that everything is participating in the transformation and unfolding of the place at every moment, and everything is interwoven and not interwoven. And the dung beetles are strange people too. The male has to push this huge ball, and the female just rides on it without doing anything. And he just has to push and push and push. And she just is sort of, eventually going to inspect his work. But it's strange things that happen. And very much like riding the subway in New York City, very strange things are happening if you're just paying attention. But this backdrop, this learning to observe, in a sense, the nature of the mind, just so much what we're doing when we're meditating, is you see all the biases and opinions and stories that you can't help but have. And I had one very interesting incident that's been with me this time, which is one day we came upon what are called the wild dogs, which you never know if you're going to see because they cover 10 or 20 miles in a morning. And so you may be thinking you'll never see them and you happen upon them, or you may be chasing them and never catch them. But they're these boisterous, dingo-looking, splashy, alive creatures. And they happened upon a wildebeest giving birth one morning. And was an incredible scene in the sense that wildebeests look a little like they're made from spare parts of other creatures. Like they're very strange people. They have horns, they sort of look antelope-y, um, and they're not necessarily known for being the sharpest tools in the shed. My friend was telling me a story, another story of a wildebeest male who a lioness had caught another meal and he was alarm calling at her, which is what all the prey animals do. The bush is always speaking to you. If you learn to listen, all the alarm calls, all the everything is telling you what things are like and where they are at any given moment. But this wildebeest was alarming at this lioness who already had a meal. And he's just, hee, 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 and she's flicking her tail. She's kind of like, dude, shut up. Like, you're going to give away my cover. Because if you're a predator, the only thing you have going for you is surprise. And he was going to blow hers. And he just wouldn't give it up. And so she finally got up from her meal. She was going to go over and swat him just to kind of get him to piss off. And apparently he panicked and just ran right into a tree. Ping. And she caught him. She thought, oh, 2 meals. But this is part of realizing the dance of things. That the lioness is not bad. The wildebeest is not anything. This clearly was his fate. He brought it on, Um, and so this morning, with these wild dogs, we happened upon all these wildebeest mothers with their 2 little calves. And the wild dogs think, ooh. And one of these mothers is actually in the process of giving birth, meaning you can see the little hooves coming out of her as these dogs are approaching. And the most miraculous thing was that the dogs circled them and started this chanting sound, which I have never heard before, never seen them do before, this chanting. And it went on for probably 5 or 10 minutes. And it completely hypnotized anything in the vicinity. And these wildebeest mothers had their calves in the middle and were protecting them against the dogs were trying to break the barrier. And it was interesting to watch all our minds, right? Bad dogs, good wildebeest. We want the wildebeest to win. It's unfair. These terrorizing dogs, all these sorts of things. You just realize, but the dogs have pups too. They have mouths to feed, and this is part of life. And this went on for what seemed like an unreasonable amount of time to me. Had to go take a nap after this was over. But the wildebeest pushed the dogs off and broke them up. And the dogs went to lie down, and this went on and on for a good few rounds where the dogs would try again and the wildebeest would push them back again, and even the mother giving birth would push them back again. And I was talking to John Tarrant about this the other day, about predicament koans. This is the ultimate wildebeest predicament koan. How are you going to get out of this situation if you're a wildebeest? And slowly, what John was saying to me, which is so true, is that so many situations in life, you don't actually solve them. They just begin to change. And you could feel in this, nothing could help this situation other than it just slowly started to change. The dogs got a little bored, the wildebeest got a little less stressed, everything just started to move, and suddenly, almost like a tiptoeing act in a Disney cartoon or something that have the deep, 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 deep. The wildebeest sort of moved off, and the dogs sent a runner to try to find them and couldn't find them. And so the dogs had to, find there. And about 30 minutes later, we got to see the little calf who was born and wet and suckling. And it was impossible not to feel like our side had won. But that was part of the interesting thing, was just to see, well, but everything, we and the things we perceive, are interwoven and not interwoven. And how this interweaving continues on, and how the species and the plants and the river and the everything, by nature of being itself, somehow takes care of each other and takes care of itself by each thing being itself. And of course, being human, my mind had so many opinions about this, ways of improving the relations between predator and prey, ways that it shouldn't have to go this way, but I see, this is exactly like my life, that I have opinions about things that are just the way they are. But if I can somehow allow things to be, they take care of each other. They take care of themselves. And there's something too, I think, that part of what Zen offers is placing ourselves, our lives, and our troubles against this larger backdrop, the larger unfolding of life itself. And there's two sides of that, I guess. One, beginning to see that eternal quality, the way that one thing is just changing colors and shapes and costumes over and over and over and over again, and has been doing it. Bankei called it the unborn side of life. That which is never born and can never die, just is. And that's somehow available to us, not just in the splashy parts of life or the what seem to be special moments, but it's in everything. It's in the spoon at the kitchen table. It's in, let me read you, our friend Marie Howe, who sits with us sometimes, wrote this great, see if I can find it here. It's a great reflection on the poet Stanley Kunitz. There it is. Stanley was pretty good at the spoon thing, that's what I'll say. At a poetry festival, someone once asked Stanley about his relationship to nature, capital N. "I am nature," he retorted, not unkindly. And he knew, because he was nature, that he would die. He lived with that awareness and wrote about it. To be human, he used to say, was to know yourself to be living and dying at the same time. But it has always seemed to me that he lived at the intersection of time and eternity, and that he lived in time so comfortably. Anyone who's ever been shopping with Stanley remembers how he would pick up a lemon and look at it intently. One could walk 3 times around the grocery store before Stanley had looked at several lemons long enough to choose one and move on to the lettuce. He didn't hurry. He'd tie up the little bundle of herbs in a brown paper and string. "Wait right here," he'd say, disappearing into the kitchen. "I have just the thing." And he never did two things at once. On a train to Albany a few years ago, our last journey together, I asked him how he did it. How did he live in the present when I and everyone I knew was always harried, hurried, late, and unsettled? "You must grab a hold of time," he said, "and draw it into yourself. You must train it so that it corresponds to your own interior rhythms. Otherwise," he said, "you'll be chasing it all your life." A few minutes later, we lurched to the dining car, bought some food, and sat at one of the tables. The world was rushing past the wide windows, backyards and satellite dishes, junked cars, highways, factories, hospitals. Stanley opened up our little snacks, pulling carefully at the cellophane, and then he set them between us. "Here is our feast," he declared, and we ate our crackers and rubbery cheese. Amanda's singing reminded me of an interview I saw recently on The Guardian called Thresholds. It's about this group, this choir that sings to the dying, which I think is actually something Amanda has done. But the interview was very touching because the main woman that they were talking to, she had been a little bit part of this group in another area and moved and decided she wanted to start her own community of it. And within 10 months, I think, of her getting this going, both her husband and her son, for different reasons, died. And what was so moving about the interview was that it's a very interesting thing that you often don't know, like when something healing is happening, are you healing you? Are you healing someone else? Are they healing you? Are they, it's part of that interwoven and not interwoven thing. And listening to this woman, it was so clear that in a way, she had started doing something to offer something, which then gave to her in her own healing, which then allowed her to be with people in a different way, which then, just went on and on. And the whole reason I went on this trip was with a young woman who had lost her mother this year. That was part of the idea, was to, allow her a kind of retreat and refilling of life. And I was saying to her one day, she's only 24, so she's new in the way of opening to the things that happen in life. And I asked her, well, how has it been changing her? And she said something very similar to this woman in the interview, which is she's not afraid of anything anymore. She's not afraid of things in herself. She's not afraid of things that might happen. It's opened her to life in a different way. And that she very candidly said, don't get me wrong, what happened is fucked. But she said, I can feel how it brought so many gifts. And it gets very hard to distinguish after a while what is the difficulty and what is the gift, just like the predator and prey and seasons and everything else, interwoven and not interwoven. I don't know, John Tarrant, would you like to say anything on these intercalary days?
Hi, thank you. I echo what you said about how great it is to be in the temple together, so thank you. And I have a sense of is a funny kind of thing. It's both a sense of mystery and a sense of aimlessness at this time of year. And in the sense of having, maybe it's like the wildebeest, but having the situations they'll have to resolve themselves, and appear, and so I feel reasonably peaceful, but then having the thought that, oh, maybe it doesn't really stick, but the thought of maybe aimlessness is not the path. But I'm pretty good at aimlessness by now. Seems part of the Zen thing. And so I'm just sort of sitting here. It was like buckets of rain, like, I don't know, inches and inches and inches the last week. And then it's sunny now, and, everybody's behaving differently. And it just moved, the weather moved, everything moved, the predicament unraveled itself, and now it'll ravel itself back up again. So I'm sort of enjoying that, the peace of just being alive.
Thanks. It was a great exchange I found when I was looking at Shitou, when someone says, what is the fundamental teaching of the Buddha way? He says, not attaining, not knowing. You already have it. It sounds like, and then they say, well, is there anything beyond this? And Shitou said this great thing, just white clouds pass freely through the vast sky. That sounds a little bit like what you're saying. Thanks. Allison, you have anything you'd like to say?
That's such a beautiful response to give the image, which also gives the experience instead of the thought. That's just marvelous. I guess, I love that Shitou. It's, as you were reading it, it seemed to be one of the clearest descriptions of the Dharma I think I've ever come across. And so beautiful to begin the morning with that. And then I think just a little addendum to what John, a poem that he wrote and read last week about the cedar waxwings. And we've been hiking on Sonoma Mountain a lot. And this year, many of the grape vineyards didn't harvest their grapes because the price had plummeted and there was no profit in it. But it was a great profit to the cedar waxwings, who have just been feasting and feasting on these vineyards. And there's one on the side of Sonoma Mountain that we walk by, and just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cedar waxwings, and then mixed in with them thousands of what are they called? The ones that are, the name is escaping me now, the ones that they put in Central Park. What is that, John? The other ones? The birds that they were with?
Oh, starlings?
Starlings. The starlings. So 2 days ago, I was on the Sonoma Mountain again. Not a single cedar waxwing is just silent, and the vineyard is just stripped of practically every grape. It's all bare, and I'm, happy for everyone and the grapes, and they got harvested in their way. But then I missed them, the cedar waxwings. And then yesterday, there were no cedar waxwings at all, but thousands and thousands of starlings were gathered on the eucalyptus grove right next to our house. And so I went out and with binoculars to take a look at them, and they would, for no apparent reason, all of a sudden just explode into these clouds of thousands of birds in the murmurations and changing shape. And I was just absolutely enchanted with it. And then at one point they came back to the eucalyptus, and I'm looking at some of them, and one of them looks weird. And so I look closer, and it's a cedar waxwing. And there's another one near it, and there's 2 cedar waxwings that have left their flock and have joined permanently with the starlings. And I thought, oh, that's it. There you go. Don't limit yourself to your own small story. And apparently they had not.
That's great. In a way, there are no northern or southern ancestors. You just take that's well, you can imagine too, the like Wei Nang who going along hearing this song, they suddenly think, I heard this poem last weekend somewhere on Grange Road and it gave me an idea.
We could be a starling.
That's great. Thank you. I think Michelle Riddle's on here somewhere. Michelle, would you like to say anything?
Yes, just before we go on, can I say
Sure, please.
the people are asking for the translation stuff. That's a translation that I did with Joan Sutherland, and you can find it on. It's not the Sandakai. Somebody says the Sandakai, and that's a Japanese term for kind of the same poem. But anyway, it should be on our website if you look for "Taking Part in the Gathering." Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yes. It's a beautiful, like I said, a little more sexy title too. I appreciate it. These things count. Michelle, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I think Tess made it clear, but it's in the sutras. Yeah, so a lot of the time we've been sitting here, I couldn't turn my video on. I kept trying to turn it on. It said, the host has disabled your video. You cannot appear. And then it changed. Then I could. I just want to say one thing I was noticing when you read the Marie Howe poem about Stanley Kunitz. I was struck by the rhyme of him, putting the food on the table in the dining car of the train and saying, like, this is our feast, this is it. And her poem where her brother holds up the cheese sandwich and says, this is what you've been waiting for. And how what we notice and appreciate in others tells us something about our own wisdom and something we want and need. And so I was just appreciating that. And it's true for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, we and the things we perceive are interwoven. And last thing I'll say about that, and then we'll sit, and I think Michael might bestow blessings on us, was really noticing eyes this time while I was in Africa. And I notice something different every time I go, which is always very interesting, but how the nature of each thing is so present in its eyes. The elephants have these deep brown, caramel, light-filled, gentle eyes and these long eyelashes. And the crocodiles, crocodiles have this great hunting strategy, which is they lay on the causeway as the river's rushing and they just keep their mouth open. And they hope, they can sit there for hours and it's worth it because eventually something will come along and they get very annoyed when you move them from their spot. But gazing into their eye, you just see the cool side of eternity. It's what it feels like. It's deeply impersonal, but it's so full of ancientness and clarity. And the eyes that were the very most striking to me were the lion eyes. And I was thinking how much, we have the golden-haired lion koan, which is the whole universe. But how I imagined lions have these gold, fierce, piercing eyes. And you almost imagine, if you caught Lin Ji while he was really giving a teisho, that it would be that. And how that cuts in Zen. It echoes in the same way that a lion roar just echoes through your body. You just think, oh, each thing is preaching the Dharma. Each thing knows its nature and the nature of everything, and it's making it clear, just like the solitary brightness koan. You who seek the mystery in the daylight, in the shadows of the night, do not throw away your time.